Oh, hey, Nebraska constitutional conservatives. Hopefully you're doing well. Welcome to the new people who haven't been around the campaign show person for the last 4 years. But anyways, this week has been the full frontal assault to make sure that Senator Fischer's okay by the Nebraska GOP because Bannon went after her. So I got a lot of questions on Senator Fischer. Todd, what do you think about her? She hasn't done anything really. I said, well, you're kind of right. She's very quiet. She is on the Senator McConnell leadership team, honored to be so, as in her words. And so we know McConnell's a disaster. She works his plan masterfully, but I thought we'd take a full account of what Senator Fischer has done and why she's rated an F by Conservative Review. But to be fair to Senator Fischer, let's go with her own words and what she has to say. Listen closely.
So the message out there that the Senate isn't doing anything, that Congress isn't doing anything, is not the message that I like to hear at all, because I don't think it's true. And I think it's part of my mission to be able to tell Americans that we're working, the system is working the way it's supposed to. It may be frustrating at times, it may be slow at times, it's not going as fast as you want, but this is the best government there is. We should be proud of it.
This is the best government there is, and you should be proud of it. That's Senator Fischer. Again, everyone agrees, I'll agree with Senator Fischer, we're in a conservative state. She gets an F by Conservative Review, who generally every conservative will agree with that is a good standard. I've got another video I want to play here for you, because Senator Sass is taking on President Trump for his constitutional violations, even though this guy's violated the Constitution like 8 times. But this was kind of our core theme here. This guy didn't even care about mentioning protecting the Constitution until we did, and then he's like, it's blatant plagiarization.
The government is to protect us from enemies, foreign and domestic.
But the oath we take is not to defend us from threats, foreign and domestic. It's to defend the Constitution from threats, foreign and domestic.
So, pretty much we gave about every speech to defend the Constitution. So we're gonna talk about the Constitution. But we also gave a speech, if you don't vote right and you're going to vote for what's popular to win the vote, you're going to die in the desert too. Voting for right is very important from a biblical level. So today, we're going to go through Senator Fischer's record. Okay? I'm not going to worry about Sass so much today, although we'll talk about him. So let's start at the very top. Number one problem, she is on the McConnell leadership team. If you don't know what McConnell's doing, you're completely in the dark, but that's what I'm here for. I'll guide you. McConnell's a disaster. We might as well be Democrat light, as far as I'm concerned. Second problem, and this is more a problem in Nebraska. Nebraska's addicted to identity politics. They believe they're conservative out of relativity to either Democrats or relativity to their peers. What we've been brought here to do is to pull people to a standard that works for the American people. Okay? If you compare yourself to others and play this comparative identity game, you're going to miss the mark. So let's look at the standard. Here's the Conservative Review. Sass is an A, 94%. Bacon's a D already in a short amount of time, 67%. Fischer's an F, 58%. Smith, F, 52%. Fortenberry, F, is 45%. You may ask, where do these percents come? Conservative Review takes the key votes, and they say, if you vote on the conservative side, you get a plus. If you vote on the liberal side, you get a minus. What this says is Fortenberry votes more on the liberal side than the conservative side. Fischer's about 50-50. Let's read this quote. This is why the party's lost in this state. For my national followers, I know some of you are frustrated I'm not Republican. I have nothing against Republican. I used to be one. I served the party forever. But I left, and especially in this state is an establishment state. I was the only one at the Trump parties. Everyone else went to the Rubio parties because I knew that's where the movement was going. I'm really connected to the grassroots people. Our party in this state is connected to Washington and the DC elites and the New York City Wall Street elites. They are not connected with the people anymore. Listen to this quote too. This was in the Omaha World Herald, published by your Buffett puppets. Roseanne Maureen did the story. Of course, she interviewed and would never publish a story with me on purpose, and they wonder why they're called fake news. But they interviewed the chairman, J.L. Spray. I have nothing against J.L. I've talked with him. I like him. But this is just how out of touch J.L. is. He says, it's hard to run to the right of Deb Fischer. I think. I think is very telling. She's an F. Do you think it's hard to run to the right of... It's probably hard to run to the right of Deb Fischer in this state when he looks at candidates in the NEGOP because they're all playing the game. 500 people endorsed this record, and we're going to go through the record. They put their names behind it. They're part of the swamp, and I love a lot of them, and I don't try to be harsh, but they won't stand for right. They're leading this death to the desert. And I don't know what death in the desert looks like, but if your economy falls 50th in the union, economic performance in the first quarter. I know our culture, a lot of people are just feeling death in the desert with this football team. We have literal death in the desert going on in Vegas. I don't mean that to be funny. That's awful. Or overseas fighting these wars. I've warned people, vote right or you're going to get death in the desert. We put an unconstitutional senator trying to critique our president on being constitutional because ultimately he wants to be president in 2020, and then we have another politician who wants to be president after that. So they play the game. They'll put their name behind this standard because they think that's what it takes to stay in the party and to grow and rise in the ranks, and this is why our country is in trouble. And so what I'm pushing for you is to set a standard. Okay, let's get into the record, why she's an F. Constitution. Every 500 people, mostly in the political class of the party, is okay with unconstitutional fast-track authority. Violates the Constitution. The Iran deal. Did you know Senator Fischer and Senator Sass signed Tom Cotton's letter stating that the Iran deal is a treaty and was subject to the review of the Senate? They were absolutely correct in the letter. Guess what they did? They backed down. Did you ever ask yourself how, if an entire majority, the Republican Party, was against the Iran deal, how did it pass when a treaty needs 2/3 vote? This is where Senator Corker comes in and Trump's right on. They don't stand behind their words. TPP, unconstitutional. You know, we led the fight against all those. They want TPP, unconstitutional. Senator Fischer, this is specific, she tweeted out that Pence should take over the Republican nomination from Trump. Pence never even had one vote. She pulled out that tweet later. You know how unconstitutional that is? We don't believe in tyranny. Votes have to go through the people. Immigration. That's a role that belongs to the Constitution. What Senator Fischer do? Let Obama run all over immigration policy. Unconstitutional action. She wasn't there to defend the Constitution. This one's controversial among conservatives. Cruel, unusual punishment. But anyways, it's been pretty much cited in the courts that regardless if you're a prisoner of war, you can't go with punishment outside the law. Voted against that. Senator Paul tried to authorize war. Senator Fischer made a campaign pledge. She said, if the president doesn't come to the Congress for an authorization of war and wants to send our troops overseas, it doesn't get funded. That was a lie. Obama sent troops overseas to Syria, Trump sent troops, and Senator Rand Paul offered to have the authorization, a constitutional approach. Both her and Sass declined having that vote, even though that's their constitutional job. And you can't delegate your constitutional jobs. I'm going to do another post on that someday. That was tried in the Supreme Court. Okay? CIA, we know they committed perjury. Clapper did. Let it slide. Let it slide. We know that our founding fathers was against the standing army, which is your modern day CIA, NSA. Violating the rights of privacy of every citizen. What are they doing? Absolutely nothing. We know the Constitution calls for a 2-year authorization for our armies abroad. That's right after the war clause. Again, won't have the vote. They're okay authorizing a 15-year engagement in Iraq without the observation of the 2-year clause in the Constitution. Next, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15. Congress was given the power to suppress insurrection. We see President Trump's supporters being assaulted by Antifa. What do? They just watch. They just watch. Okay, I'm going to come back to this land grab. Okay, so now let's move into conservatism. So this is the Republican I grew up as. What I learned when I worked in D.C., and I still believe, and actually what I'm passionate about is, to me, there's 3 core pillars of conservatism. It's national security, it's fiscal economy, so everything to do with money, and 3, it's social conservatism. So I want to hit on those topics, and let's look at Senator Fischer's record. So let's start with national security. She voted yes to create a $60 billion global engagement center abroad. What this does is manage propaganda for the world. Again, we went through the Iran deal. She did not defend the treaty provision. Iran became a big problem. By the way, the law they cited to go with the Iran deal was, again, giving the president more power than he constitutionally had. But even in that law, he can't make the adjustments if there's a state sponsor of terrorism. That's what the law, they didn't even enforce the law, much less the treaty provision. The budget was a central campaign. She said in her campaign the budget and our debt was a national security risk, and she would, quote, go to Washington with ideas. She campaign was $15 trillion, it's growing to $30 trillion, and I haven't even touched unfunded liabilities. She voted yes to fund Pakistan with 8 jets. Senator Paul tried to strike this down. I supported him. She gave him the jets. President Trump is right. They're terrorists in Pakistan. The Haqqari network is embedded in the government. They're destroying mounts, but they're not in our interest. But she gave them weapons. Here's the biggest disaster, and I warned you against this: Syria. And in my campaign in 14 said, don't give the rebels arms. She voted yes to give them arms. 70% of those rebels became jihadists. We're talking Aleppo. We're talking hundreds of thousands, mass migration of millions. That was her vote. Give the jihadists weapons. That's what happened. She had to have the humbling reality that what she authorized only created five rebels with 500 million friendly to the West. She voted to advance, is this conservative? Our daughters. Draft our daughters. Don't ever come after my daughters, I'll tell you that. They're not going to be drafted. She rejected moving aid away from hostile foreign countries back to this country. We're not even talking about stopping foreign aid altogether. We're talking reclaiming foreign aid from hostile foreign countries. She voted against that. She voted yes to give the Saudis our best weapons and technologies. This is what we know. Saudi Arabia funded ISIS, period. Why are we giving them our best technology? When Egypt was going through their revolution, there was a bill to take back the money from Egypt away from the Muslim Brotherhood and put it into our infrastructure. She voted against that. She has the benefit of intelligence, and she makes those decisions. She is dangerous for national security. Let's go on to fiscal. She was president of the Senate during the corrupt $1.1 trillion omnibus, I call it the omnibus bill. President of the Senate had the gavel in her hand, silenced debate. There was all kinds of real conservative senators that were Republicans. They wanted to debate, amend. She was there to slam the gavel as soon as Reid and McConnell did their hijacking of the floor. So we threw $1.1 trillion out the door in under a minute. She was president of the Senate, not just complicit in the vote. She vowed her #1 campaign pledge was to control spending. She told all of you everywhere she went, they have not lowered spending once. In fact, Senator Paul's latest budget resolution in January said, hey, I'm voting against this because it takes us to $30 trillion in debt. Keep in mind, she started at $15 trillion and would spend more than Obama. She voted yes to advance that resolution. Where do I go? Senate S263. This was about balanced budget, putting us on a 5-year path and eliminating unnecessary bureaucracy. She voted against that. She voted to add more taxes, the internet tax. I think there's a quote from Doug Kagan, Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. My gosh, I mean, she's conservative. I don't understand why Bannon would want anyone to run against her. If you're for Taxpayers for Freedom, she voted yes to the internet tax, okay? The internet tax. Let's add more taxes. By the way, there's some talk on this being an Article 1, Section 9 violation, but I haven't seen that being concrete evidence yet, but watch out. Republican platform against bailouts? Nope, she voted to bail out Puerto Rico. She voted yes to waive budget discipline for the veterans deal created by Bernie Sanders. Waive budget discipline. You can be for the vets deal, but waive budget discipline? That's craziness. She voted yes, $56 billion on H.R. 2577. $56 billion more for transportation and HUD secretary. You know why they want to make the visit? They want to say thank you. Okay? She voted yes, $35 billion in H.R. 636. More for the Federal Aviation Administration. More spending. Let's go to the economy. So meanwhile, our farmers are struggling. We warned you what the adjustments needed in the Farm Bill. They haven't touched the Farm Bill. This is what's causing our depression. So our economy has fallen 50th in the union, people, in the first quarter for growth. Why? We have a depression in ag. What could she have done? A, she could have stopped spending the EPA, which was happening on our farmers. Instead, she waits for the president to do it. The budget, that's their job. Needs to work on that. Then what does she do? This is why the Republicans are losing to the Democrats. And even though they like to put us on the far right, we're actually friendlier to the Democrats because they understand we're taking on the crony capitalists. And you have a bunch of lost liberals that think Republicans represent capitalism and they want Bernie and socialism. We don't have capitalism. We have crony capitalism. We don't even have free markets. She's all for the Export-Import Bank, home of your handouts for your K Street and her donors. It's ridiculous. Okay, let's go to education. I know many of you are passionate on education. This No Child Left Behind, most conservatives think this is a disaster, and real conservatives think our federal government involved in education is a disaster. Not her. She passes S1177, $100 billion of your money over 4 years for continuing the No Child Left Behind statutes. That's horrible. She passes the Workforce Investment Act. More of your money, training workers. Hey, we don't believe in the private sector, really. Government will do it. Then she passes, she voted yes on Sylvia Burwell. I want to talk about Sylvia Burwell. She's with HHS, an Obama appointee. She's a lifetime of serving Planned Parenthood. She advanced and promoted Common Core. Do you like Common Core, conservatives? She voted yes, and she was a proponent of Common Core. And, you like national security? She's a proponent of it and on the Trilateral Commission. And she gives a yes vote to Sylvia Burwell's appointment. I'll come back to another appointment later. Then she votes yes, S1086, $17 billion new dollars for this childhood education. Sounds right? What it is guidelines that the federal government says you have to meet to get the money. This is how they control the kids. We don't need our federal government in education. Social conservative. She has voted yes to 3 budgets that fully fund Planned Parenthood, period. You want to talk about constitutional violations, the right to life. The government cannot deprive life in the 5th and 14th Amendment. Bam, guilty. She supported more of the government land grab. Do you want your federal government to buy and have 545,000 more acres? I shouldn't say buy. Yep. Government's going to grow their land mass by 545,000 acres. She said yes. Let's go back to these appointments. So we know Sylvia Burwell disaster, Planned Parenthood, Common Core, Trilateral Commission. She voted yes to Carla Hayden. She was kind of the librarian of chief. This sounds pretty minor. I'm going to tell you in Lincoln, they're pushing hard for a $40 million new library that we don't need, we don't want to use. She used to be head of the Librarian Association. You know what she did? She tried to reverse actively the Child Internet Protection Act. She was against preventing porn from being seen by kids in the library. She actually wants you to be able to surf free for porn on the internet. Just an absolute radical activist. Gives them a yes vote. That's your Senator Fischer. More into agriculture. Hey, how about more regulations? Check this one out. Senate Joint Resolution 28. Catfish. Do we need 2 agencies to inspect catfish? No, we need 1. But vote against that. Let's go with 2 agencies to inspect the same livestock. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. This $1.1 trillion while she was president of the Senate, yeah, that funded executive amnesty. Another unconstitutional illegal action. So, go back to conservative review. F. Okay? And let me go to the Todd conservative review. Everyone drops 30 points. No border security, no Obamacare repeal, no spending cuts, no Planned Parenthood reversal. Every one of these candidates should drop 30 points in the Todd. If I put Sass at 64%, Bacon at 37, Fisher at 28, Smith at 22, Fortenberry at 15%. Because no Republican should get an A. Everyone should start in an F because they can't even repeal Obamacare, secure the border, cut spending, or stop Planned Parenthood. Okay? That's my pillar. That's where I start my evaluation. And from there, these other votes, which most of you had no clue on, can come into play. But you don't want to believe me because I'm biased. That's fine. Go with conservative review. They still given her an F. And your Republican chair says I think it's hard to find someone to the right of her. I'm right here. But there's a reason we left. So every politician puts their name next to Senator Fischer. They're against weaker national security. They're okay that she violated the Constitution multiple times. They're okay our fiscal house is going to disaster. They're okay that our economy is struggling. They're okay of federal control of education. They're okay if babies are... And they're going to put their name behind that? That's what they're doing. Wake up. This is why they don't understand Trump and the grassroots revolution that's going on. Because we reject their conservatism because it's purple. It's purple. And the reason that the liberals own them is because they have no convictions. Because they know this isn't conservative. They know it's not right, and they're really more like blue. And actually, while thus on the far right, they may say we're actually cooler with the left because we're honest. We know the Constitution works for all Americans. We have to educate them. We know the Republican Party isn't really about free markets. We know they're really about fiscal control. We know they want to dominate the world, and that's not the constitutional mission. But it starts with you. You have got to drain the swamp, and the swamp starts in your brain because with the message that they try to send out, there's 500 people are on board. You should be too. Don't run against that. You want to be in the club. You want to move up. You agree, and you support people that agree with absolute garbage, but you'll get a move up. And this is why the government doesn't change. This is why I was called to poll people and say, hey, we have a standard. It's the Constitution. We're going to follow it, okay? We believe in conservatism. We can make it happen.